The day began like any other on Earth. People woke up, went to work, and carried on with their daily lives. But as the sun rose higher, something strange happened. Across the world, people began to notice that the skies were not as clear as they should have been. A strange dark shadow stretched across the horizon. At first, it seemed like an unusual weather pattern, just another storm or some kind of natural event. But soon, people realized that this was no ordinary storm. It was something far more terrifying, something that would change the fate of Earth forever. Above the clouds, in the vacuum of space, the Zorthian fleet had arrived. A massive armada of warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever seen, appeared without warning. They descended into Earth's atmosphere, blocking out the sunlight with their dark, metallic shapes. The ships were unlike anything human technology had ever produced. Their surfaces were smooth, with sharp angles and eerie glowing lights. They were alien in every sense of the word. The first sign of trouble came when communication systems around the world suddenly went silent. Phones, televisions, radios, all went dead. For a brief moment, there was complete silence. Then, across every screen, a single message appeared. It was short, but it was enough to strike fear into the hearts of everyone who saw it. Surrender now, or face total destruction. The message was broadcast in every language, leaving no room for misunderstanding. The Zorthians, an alien species from a distant star system, had come to Earth with one purpose: to conquer. The people of Earth had been caught completely off guard. No one had seen this coming. There were no warnings, no signs that an invasion was imminent. The Zorthian fleet had simply appeared, and with them came a chilling promise. Across the globe, governments scrambled to respond. Military leaders rushed to their command centers, trying to assess the situation and determine what they could do. The Zorthian ships, however, seemed invincible. Their technology was far more advanced than anything Earth had ever known. In a matter of hours, Earth's defenses were rendered useless. Missiles, fighter jets, and defense satellites were all easily destroyed or disabled by the Zorthian fleet. They had no chance. Cities across the world were plunged into chaos as people panicked. Thousands of miles away from the ships, in the quietest corners of Earth, people looked up at the sky in fear and confusion. Some thought it was a nightmare. Others thought it was some kind of advanced military exercise. But no one could deny the truth for long. The Zorthians had come, and Earth was defenseless. On the streets of New York, traffic came to a halt as people looked up at the sky, mouths open in disbelief. In London, people stood frozen in place, unable to tear their eyes away from the massive ships hovering above them. In cities across Asia, Africa, and South America, the same scene played out. People were terrified, unable to comprehend what was happening. There was no clear plan, no way to fight back. Earth was simply not prepared for this kind of invasion. In Washington, D.C., the president and his advisors huddled in a bunker beneath the White House, trying to formulate a plan. The military was on high alert, but there was nothing they could do. The Zorthians had complete control of the skies. Any attempt to retaliate would be futile. A sense of helplessness filled the room as the president stared at the screens in front of him. The image of the Zorthian ships loomed larger, and the realization set in. Earth was being invaded, and there was little they could do to stop it. The Zorthians weren't just here to threaten. They were here to take. Their message had been clear. Earth would either submit to their rule, or they would face total destruction. But what did that really mean? Would they destroy Earth? Would they wipe out humanity? The questions hung in the air, unanswered. As the Zorthians began their descent towards Earth's surface, panic spread like wildfire. Emergency services scrambled to evacuate civilians from high-risk areas, but it was clear that the evacuation would be insufficient. People ran in all directions, not knowing where to go, not knowing who to trust. Governments had failed them. The military had failed them. The world's leaders had no answers. Some individuals believed it was the end. They believed that humanity was weak, that they had no chance against an alien force so powerful and advanced. As the first waves of destruction began, alien ships firing powerful beams that leveled buildings and ignited fires, the hope of resistance seemed slim. Earth's cities were being torn apart, one by one. The Zorthian fleet didn't even have to land. Their ships hovered above, firing their devastating weapons with terrifying accuracy. But in the chaos, a flicker of hope appeared. Unseen by the Zorthians, hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth, a secret was waiting. It was something humanity had kept from the world, something that had been developed in secret by the most brilliant minds on Earth. A ship, unlike any other, was about to change everything. The Titan, a state-of-the-art warship, had been in development for years, built with the sole purpose of defending Earth from threats exactly like this one. It was humanity's last hope, a ship powerful enough to face the Zorthian fleet. But only a select few knew about it, and it had not yet been completed. As the world trembled in fear, the Titan was about to be unleashed. In the face of utter destruction, humanity's last chance at survival was about to make its presence known. The Zorthians might have underestimated Earth, but they would soon learn that humanity would not surrender without a fight. The battle for Earth was just beginning, and it was a fight the Zorthians had not expected. As the Titan came online and prepared for launch, the first glimmer of hope began to shine in the hearts of humanity. Would this ship be enough? Could it stop the alien invaders? The fate of the world now rested on the shoulders of those who would stand against the overwhelming force of the Zorthian armada. The clock was ticking, and Earth's future hung in the balance. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would the Zorthians succeed in their conquest? Only time would tell. As the towering Zorthian fleet loomed overhead, Earth's resistance seemed a distant dream. Cities were burning and whole nations were falling to the alien invaders, who showed no mercy. Yet in the shadows, far from the destruction above, something was stirring, a force that had remained hidden from the world for years. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in an underground military facility that few even knew existed, a quiet revolution was beginning. The Titan, humanity's last hope, was preparing for its first and most crucial mission. The project had been initiated long before the Zorthians had made their appearance, when intelligence had hinted at the growing threats in the universe. But even the world's most advanced leaders didn't truly believe an attack of this magnitude could ever come. They thought the Zorthian fleet would remain a distant danger, a threat too far out in space to matter. But as Earth's skies filled with alien warships, it became clear that humanity had underestimated the cosmos. Inside a cavernous chamber, deep beneath the Earth's surface, the Titan sat ready. It was humanity's masterpiece, a ship built to withstand the toughest of battles, armed with weapons capable of shaking even the most powerful alien fleets. Its design was unlike anything seen before, blending advanced human technology with decades of experimentation. Its engines hummed with quiet energy, waiting to unleash its full power. Inside, a team of the most brilliant minds in the world had worked tirelessly to perfect it. Now, the time had come to test whether all their work would be enough. Captain Ethan Blake stood before the control panel of the Titan, staring at the massive screen that displayed the destruction unfolding across the planet. He had been preparing for this moment for years, but now that it had arrived, he felt the weight of the responsibility crash down on him. This ship, this single warship, was humanity's last chance to fight back. The crew, made up of the best pilots, engineers, and strategists, had trained for every possible scenario. But nothing could have prepared them for the overwhelming force of the Zorthian armada. Still, there was no turning back now. "Captain Blake, we're ready to launch," came the voice of Lieutenant Anna Ruiz, a skilled strategist and one of the few people who knew about the Titan's existence. She looked at Blake with a mixture of determination and uncertainty. They both knew that the odds of success were slim, but there was no other choice. Blake nodded, his hand hovering over the launch button. He could feel the pressure, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Thousands of lives had already been lost. The world was in chaos. It was up to him and his team to make sure that this wasn't the end of humanity. The Titan was their last hope. The ship's engines roared to life, and the Titan slowly began to lift off from its underground hangar. As it ascended through the layers of Earth's crust, Blake couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Despite the odds, humanity had built something incredible, something that could stand against the might of the Zorthian invaders. But would it be enough? As the Titan broke through the surface and ascended into the atmosphere, Blake's eyes fixed on the distant fleet of alien ships. They were massive, far larger than any of Earth's ships, and their weapons had already reduced entire cities to rubble. The Zorthians didn't just want Earth, they wanted total annihilation. Blake clenched his fist, his resolve hardening. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for humanity's future. "Anna," Blake said, turning to his lieutenant, "send a message to Earth. Let them know we're coming. Let them know we're not finished yet." Anna quickly typed on her console, sending a signal to Earth. Her message was brief but clear. Humanity is fighting back. We're not giving up. The Titan soared through space, heading straight for the heart of the Zorthian fleet. The alien ships were so vast that they seemed to fill the sky, their dark forms blotting out the stars. As they drew closer, Blake's heart pounded in his chest. The ship's advanced sensors detected dozens of Zorthian warships surrounding them, their weapons ready to fire. There was no turning back now. Blake reached over and activated the ship's weapon systems. The Titan was equipped with a special type of energy cannon, capable of targeting and disabling enemy ships in a single shot. However, it was a risky move. The cannon required immense energy, and if it missed, they would be sitting ducks. "Prepare to fire," Blake commanded, his voice steady despite the uncertainty. He wasn't sure if it would work. He wasn't even sure if they would survive this first confrontation. But he knew that if they didn't fight, Earth would fall. The Titan came into range, and Blake took a deep breath. The alien ships turned their attention toward them, their weapons charging up. A storm of energy blasts shot from the enemy ships, tearing through the space around the Titan. The crew braced themselves, holding tight as the ship dodged the incoming fire. Blake's hands tightened on the controls. He could feel the ship shudder under the force of the blasts. "Lock onto the nearest target. Fire," Blake yelled. The energy cannon fired, unleashing a brilliant, blinding beam of light. The shot hit one of the Zorthian ships dead on, and it exploded in a burst of flames. The crew cheered, but Blake knew it wasn't over yet. The Zorthians would retaliate with everything they had. As the Titan engaged the enemy, Blake's mind raced. How long could they keep this up? How much longer could they survive in the face of such overwhelming power? The odds were against them, but the fight had just begun. Earth's resistance had finally been unleashed, and humanity was about to show the Zorthians just what it meant to underestimate the will of the human race. The Titan was just one ship, but in that moment, it represented something more. Humanity's defiance, its unwillingness to surrender. And as long as it still flew, Earth had a chance. The Titan was now deep within the heart of the alien fleet, its massive hull cutting through the void of space as it unleashed a torrent of destructive firepower. Its weapons roared with power, sending shockwaves through the enemy ranks. In the distance, the Zorthian ships were already regrouping, forming tight formations to retaliate against the sudden and unexpected assault. The battle had begun in earnest. Captain Ethan Blake gripped the controls tightly as explosions rang out in every direction. His heart pounded, but he kept his focus. The Titan was their only hope, and he couldn't afford to lose it. The ship's sensors blinked with warnings as the Zorthian ships closed in, their advanced energy weapons charging up. Each strike from the alien fleet seemed more deadly than the last. The battle was far from over, and if anything, it was escalating quickly. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire from the enemy flagship," said Lieutenant Anna Ruiz, her voice calm but urgent. The screen before her showed the Zorthian flagship looming large in front of them, a monstrous vessel, far bigger and more powerful than any other ship in their fleet. It had advanced weaponry capable of decimating entire fleets with a single shot. The Titan had already destroyed several enemy ships. But this was different. This was the heart of the invasion. "We need to take it down before they can fire that weapon again," Blake said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Preparing the Titan's main cannon," replied Lieutenant Ruiz. The energy in the ship's core began to rise, building in intensity. The weapon could only be fired once it reached full power, but with every passing second, the Zorthian flagship drew closer, and the chance to destroy it grew slimmer. Blake's eyes darted between the redouts, seeing enemy ships closing in on every side. The Titan had the firepower, but it was outnumbered. If they didn't disable the flagship soon, they would be overwhelmed. Captain Blake gave a sharp command. "Pilot, I need a direct line to the flagship. Get us as close as possible without getting blasted apart." The Titan's pilot, Commander Jackson, gritted his teeth as he maneuvered the ship expertly, threading through a storm of enemy fire. The Titan was agile, far more so than the massive alien ships, but it wasn't invincible. The Zorthian fleet was relentless, pushing harder with each passing minute. Commander Jackson pushed the engines to their limit, taking the Titan within striking distance of the flagship. As they closed in, Blake could see the Zorthian flagship in all its terrifying size. A massive, dark structure bristling with weapons. It had defensive shields, something the Titan didn't have, and every energy blast that hit them sent jolts of electric pain through the ship. The crew held on tight, praying the Titan's defenses would hold long enough. Blake's fingers hovered over the main cannon's firing button. The weapon was nearly ready. The tension in the air was unbearable. The Zorthian ships surrounded them like a swarm of angry bees, blasting everything they could. But Blake's focus was locked onto the massive flagship ahead. If they didn't hit it now, Earth would be lost. Firing main cannon. Lieutenant Ruiz's voice rang out with determination. In a blinding flash, the Titan's energy weapon discharged, sending a surge of raw power toward the Zorthian flagship. Time seemed to stretch as the beam streaked through space. The Zorthian flagship's shields flared, crackling with energy, trying to absorb the impact. But the Titan's blast was too powerful. The shields shattered, and the beam smashed into the hull of the ship, sending shockwaves through the surrounding fleet. For a moment, there was silence. The vast emptiness of space seemed to hold its breath as the Zorthian flagship began to break apart. Explosions ripped through its core, sending chunks of debris hurtling into the void. The massive ship, once an imposing symbol of destruction, was now a broken wreck. "We did it," Ruiz said, her voice barely above a whisper, disbelief and relief washing over her. But Blake's expression remained hard. Not yet. The alien ships around them, still numbering in the hundreds, were furious. They circled around the Titan, now more determined than ever to crush the single ship that dared to challenge them. Without their flagship, the Zorthians were disorganized, but they were still powerful. Blake knew that even though they had scored a significant victory, the war was far from over. "We've taken down their flagship, but they're still coming," Blake said, his mind racing. "We need to buy Earth some time." He turned to his crew, all of whom had been working nonstop for hours. Sweat dripped from their faces, their eyes tired but filled with determination. "Anna, get me a line to Earth's command," Blake said, his voice sharp. "Tell them we've taken down their flagship, but we need reinforcements. If we can't stop the rest of the fleet, Earth will fall." "On it, Captain," Ruiz replied, her fingers flying over her console as she sent out the distress signal. Blake turned back to the screen, watching as the remaining Zorthian ships advanced. They were angry, but they were also weakened. They no longer had the advantage of their flagship, and the morale of their fleet seemed to be wavering. But there was still so much left to do, and Blake knew the hardest part was yet to come. As the Titan continued its battle with the Zorthian fleet, Blake's mind was focused on one thing: Earth. The world had been on the brink of annihilation, and it was up to this one ship to stop it. He had no idea how many more battles would come, but there was no going back now. Earth's fate rested on the shoulders of his crew and their ability to push forward, no matter the cost. Blake wasn't about to let Earth fall. Not today. Not on his watch. Suspense. The flagship had been destroyed, but the remaining Zorthian fleet was still vast, and their resolve even stronger. Would the Titan and its crew survive the next wave of attacks? Would humanity's last hope be enough to defeat the invaders, or would the Zorthians finally claim victory? The battle had escalated into a vicious storm of fire and fury. The Titan was now surrounded by the remnants of the Zorthian fleet, and every angle of space seemed to be filled with enemy warships. The destruction was endless. For every Zorthian ship that fell, 2 more took its place. The Titan was holding its own, but the strain was becoming unbearable. Captain Ethan Blake gritted his teeth as the ship shuddered under another direct hit. The view screens were flickering, showing a distorted image of the chaos outside. Blinking red alerts filled the bridge, and the hum of the engine seemed weaker with each passing second. Every system was stretched to its limits, and Blake knew it was only a matter of time before something critical failed. "Report," Blake barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Aft shields are down to 40%, Captain." Lieutenant Ruiz responded, her hands dancing over the control panel. "Main energy reserves are critically low. If we don't finish this soon, we won't be able to hold them off." Blake's mind raced as he looked at the vast armada of Zorthian ships encircling them. The flagship might be gone, but the fleet was far from broken. Each ship had its own formidable weapons, and they were determined to obliterate the Titan. "Commander Jackson, can we get a clear shot at their command ship?" Blake asked, his voice unwavering despite the pressure. If they could destroy the Zorthian command ship, it might break the fleet's will to fight. Jackson, the ship's pilot, swerved the Titan through a field of debris, narrowly dodging a barrage of Zorthian blasts. He punched in commands, pushing the ship to its limits. "I can get us close, Captain, but we'll have to fight our way through." Blake's knuckles whitened around the armrests of his seat. The Titan had the firepower to take down enemy ships, but with the shields weakening and the weapons firing at maximum capacity, there was no guarantee they'd survive long enough to reach the command ship. "We don't have much time," Blake said, his eyes locked on the distant Zorthian command vessel. It was larger than anything they'd seen so far, bristling with weapons and energy shields that seemed to shimmer in the distance. "We make one final push. Full power to the forward weapons. We break through or die trying." The crew nodded in grim silence. Everyone on board knew this was the last chance. If they couldn't get through the heart of the Zorthian fleet, Earth would fall. There would be no reinforcements, no second chances. It was now or never. "Fire all cannons," Blake shouted. A thunderous roar echoed through the Titan as every weapon on board came to life. The Titan's main energy cannon shot a devastating beam of pure energy straight at the Zorthian command ship. At the same time, smaller weapons fired rapid bursts of energy, targeting enemy fighters and frigates that tried to intercept them. The Zorthian command ship shuddered as the beam struck, its shields flaring brightly, but they held. The ship's own massive weapons began charging, and the space around them lit up as blasts rained down on the Titan. The hull groaned under the pressure as another hit struck the aft. They had to act fast before the Titan was reduced to a floating hulk in the midst of enemy ships. "We're almost there," Commander Jackson shouted. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of desperation in it. The Zorthian ships were swarming them, closing in from all directions. He pushed the controls forward, aiming for the blind spot in the Zorthian flagship's defenses. Blake held his breath as the Titan surged forward, cutting through the chaos like a spear piercing a storm. The energy blasts from the Zorthian fleet continued to barrage them, but now they were so close that the enemy's fire became less effective. They were too focused on keeping their shields up and maintaining fire on the Titan to reposition themselves for a clean shot. "Get us within range," Blake commanded, firing main cannon again. Ruse said, her hands flying across the console. The energy reserves were nearly drained, but this would have to be enough. She hit the button, and the massive energy weapon fired once more, this time with even greater intensity. The beam tore through the void, hitting the Zorthian command ship directly. For a moment, everything went still. Then, with a violent explosion, the Zorthian flagship's shields shattered completely. The energy blast had struck the heart of the command ship's power core. The massive vessel twisted in space, and then an enormous explosion erupted, sending shockwaves through the fleet. Blake watched in stunned silence as the flagship crumbled, its massive form breaking apart like a dying star. A wave of panic swept through the remaining Zorthian ships as their leadership was obliterated. The remaining fleet wavered, unsure of what to do next. The battle had turned in humanity's favor. "Captain," Ruse said, her voice low, We've done it. The fleet is retreating." But Blake wasn't celebrating. He knew the battle had been won, but the cost had been enormous. The Titan was damaged beyond recognition. The crew was exhausted, and the ship's systems were hanging by a thread. Despite the retreat of the Zorthian forces, Blake wasn't sure if the Titan would make it back to Earth. "Let's get out of here," Blake said, his voice filled with the weight of the moment. "Take us home." Commander Jackson slowly turned the Titan away from the wreckage of the Zorthian fleet, guiding it through the debris. The tension that had gripped the ship seemed to ease, though only slightly. The crew knew their victory had come at a tremendous cost. The Titan had done its job, but the real work was only just beginning. Humanity had won the battle, but the war against the universe's threats had only begun. As the Titan limped its way back toward Earth, Blake stood at the front of the bridge, watching the stars. For the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of hope. But he knew that the galaxy was full of dangers, and Earth would need to be ready. The Titan had just begun to show humanity's true power. The Zorthians might have retreated now, but who knew what other threats lay in the stars? For now, Earth had survived. But the war had only just begun. Suspense. With the Zorthian fleet broken and Earth's first major victory secured, what new challenges would humanity face? Would the Titan be able to recover in time for the next invasion? And what had the Zorthians learned from their defeat? The galaxy was full of answers, and Captain Blake knew that humanity would have to fight for its future, no matter the cost.